Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints. Just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We're continuing our coverage of DS9. We're up to the episode called The Alternate. It is the 12th episode of Season 2, aired back on January 9th, 1994. It was, the teleplay goes to Bill Dial, and the story goes to Jim Trombetta and Bill Dial, directed by David Carson, who would go on to direct Star Trek Generations after this episode. In this episode, the Bajoran scientist who used to be Odo's teacher, that's an interesting description, arrives with evidence of others of Odo's kind. We're joined by Modi. Modi, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, I think. We're going to talk about the alternate. We got done talking about Rivals, and now we're going to move back to what I would consider to be a more traditional Star Trek episode than what Rivals was. Trying to flesh out the backstory of a character. We're trying to introduce a solid mystery thriller aspect, and we're trying to get a little bit of sci-fi nonsense thrown in on top of it. So we're going to take a break. I'm going to play an audio clip, and me and Modi are going to come back, and we're going to break down the alternate.
It would seem to me that, being a scientist yourself, Lieutenant, you can appreciate the difficulty of our dilemma and the elegance of the solution. When Odo was first found, nobody knew who, or indeed what, it was we were dealing with. A shapeless, viscous mass of fluid, a veritable organic broth. That was our Odo in the beginning.
When did you realize you were dealing with a sentient life form?
He didn't. I had to teach him that myself.
It's true. It's very true. Tell her.
It was a dilemma for me. I'd never seen anything like these creatures either.
Seen isn't really an appropriate description. He had no eyes, per se.
I was just trying to describe it in simple terms.
He had never perceived anything like us before.
All right, so the alternate. Modi, you want to lead this one off? Let me know what you thought about this.
I don't know. It's a tough one. It's cool to get some backstory for Odo, and a very mysterious character in general. We don't get a lot of backstory from him usually at all. It's also a good spin on a father-son relationship, I think, too. And seeing an aspect of it seems like it kind of rings true as far as having for the kind of person that Mora seems to be, and in Odo's reaction to him, it seems like it comes by it honestly, as far as his kind of embarrassment by him almost, or just, I don't know what to explain with it, but kind of angst towards the Doctor.
Yeah.
It all feels like a very angsty father-son relationship.
Yeah. I think that I think my issue with this episode is that I can't tell if the writing is lacking or if it's just being too subtle with what it's trying to say about them. I think that the most interesting aspect of this episode is the Mora-Odo relationship, which is tied into a science experiment crossed with a father-son relationship. And the way that Mora talks to Odo is on its face a way of him talking about his experiment and sort of being interested in the results of his experiment. But it's also symbolic of a father and son having a difficult relationship where the father's trying to figure out what is driving and motivating his son to do, and also being a little bit domineering. The problem I have is from this episode, I can't really tell if Mora is a bad father figure to him. It reminds me in a lot of ways of the Icarus Factor on some level. Remember the TNG episode where Riker's father comes and they fight with the Anbo Jitsu?
Yeah. I see a lot of that there.
And Icarus Factor is funny because at the end, the whole episode is destroyed when Riker and his father have a I love you scene, even though Riker's father is clearly a dick in that episode. And
true.
Riker should not be so forgiving of him. I kind of have the same reaction here at the end, although I don't know if it's justified because I don't know if the Mora character is written slimily enough.
You get into a situation here because of their relationship. you see a father-son relationship with no love. Basically, there's no reason for Mora to love Odo. I mean, and vice versa. He is an experiment to him, and is treated as such, as he said, a lot of the time. But there's also this kind of like Mora mentions that he feels pride over what Odo's become, and it's like, you don't get to take credit for that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why you feel like you get to take credit for that. And that part feels like that Riker dad situation there a little bit. But at the end, it doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't have quite as much "I love you, Dad" kind of situation at the end, because it isn't that kind of relationship. I don't know what it is, but Mora views him as an experiment almost the whole way through, except he does mention pride and does seem to be fatherly towards him at the same time too.
I just think that not knowing the basis of what these experiments were is kind of problematic. And in previous episodes, we've learned that Odo was not happy in that situation, and so he left. He didn't think highly. I think he has a previous episode, Necessary Evil. He says he didn't think highly of the scientist that he was working with, and like. Is Odo in a cage during this? That's
the thing. Like all this whole relationship can be viewed in a different light depending if you find out how those experiments went. If they were like zapping with electricity just to see what happens, kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If they were torturing Odo just to find out how he ticks.
Yes.
Like this could have a totally different connotation if you find out he's kind of an abusive father at the end. And we don't get that at all, but it does. The opinion of Mora hinges upon that, and the way Odo reflects on him, it could go either way. I mean, he's at the one side, he probably isn't going to be happy in captivity of being a science experiment. He wants to be a person. He has conscience. He has a sentience, so he doesn't want to be a test subject.
Yeah.
And that alone would be enough to say, hey, you know what? That's great. Go on. But if he's doing even more to him, of trying to like find out more about how this guy ticks, then totally it would be paint Mora in a terrible light.
Yes, and I think it's a mistake not to describe that situation, because I don't know how you feel, but I feel that the relationship is more abusive than they're letting on, especially in the scene where Odo immediately cracks when Mora discovers that Odo is the one that's been shapeshifting into a monster, and he doesn't know about it. Like Odo. And the monster thing, I think, is supposed to be symbolic of that inner hatred of Mora.
Right.
So
why would he hate him that much?
Right.
The thing that's the part that doesn't boil down. Like, he must have done some shit, man. Because Odo for Odo to shapeshift and then immediately go after this guy, it's not just angst there. There's something going on.
Right. And I think that that's the way that I read the Odo backstory is that Odo's captivity was sort of a prison-like existence, and if he didn't just walk out, he almost escaped from that situation. And they don't really clarify that. They don't bring anything into it. And as you say, the Mora character hinges on you knowing about that. This is a disturbing episode if Mora is that abusive to him. Like the way it wraps up, Rhoda's like, I love you too, because also, he's filled with hate for him.
Yeah, and there's a scene where I'm starting to question what Mora's motivation for coming here was. And he says he's coming here because he's found a location that might have more shape-shifting creatures. But there's the scene when Mora is going after Odo and saying, telling him, he's like, "This, you're the monster, and what do you know everything that's going on around here?" And it's trying to convince him that he's the monster.
Yeah.
It feels like he's manipulating him.
Well, and Odo,
into thinking that, so that he leaves the station, comes back with Mora somehow.
Yeah,
like,
Odo.
If that could be really scummy, if that was the way it went down.
Odo reacts to that by saying, "I'm not coming back with you," which seems to be Odo recognizes that as his ulterior motives for it. And I think that it's James Sloyan, I think, is the actor. He played the Defector in the TNG episode. He's in a bunch of Star Trek episodes. He's a very good actor. I just think that that character is not clearly defined enough throughout the entire story.
You don't know his motivation at all, like why he's really there and why he's trying to convince Odo that he's a monster.
Right.
At the end there, even though he's right. I mean, in the end, but it's just, I don't know.
I think that
seems scummy.
I think that the scene in the in Odo's office, where Mora explains to him that he's becoming a monster, and Odo starts melting and sort of breaking down. That's the core of their relationship, I think. Like, the episode needs to be about that, and it's not about that in a lot of ways. And if the writer of the episode thinks that is not the central conflict, that scene sticks out like a sore thumb at that point, because that is right. That's weird. You're only writing that to turn Odo into basically the Incredible Hulk version of a changeling, and that doesn't feel right to me. So
it feels like emotional abuse. Like he just like railed on him until he melted. Like, seriously, what is that?
It is the Hulk thing, right? Like, he's turning into a monster because he's getting angry at him.
But he's purposeful. It feels like, I mean, it depends on Mora's backstory and Odo's backstory with them, which angle that goes. But really, if we find out like one little piece of information about their experiments, it changes the whole story as far as Mora's concerned. Yeah.
Because, and I think that's a better episode. I think if it's just they had kind of a friendly father-son relationship that was slightly strained, on some level, like not atypical from a traditional father-son relationship, and it was just a repeat of the Icarus factor coming on, I'm much less interested in that as an episode. The Odo being experimented on, and his sort of him being terrified of this scientist who has come back for him. It, like, on some level, would it have made more sense to have Odo's scientists be Cardassians?
Oh yeah, I mean that would have shaped everything about this, because we have already ideas of what Cardassians do and their methods, right? But we don't know the Bajorian, like, what in this particular case. It's kind of a blank slate. We don't know. Yeah. It's going to depend on because we've seen Bajorans of all kinds. I mean, we've seen them be evil and seen them be good. So there's just any kind of range you can get with them. If it was Cardassian, you would immediately assume evil. And but it's an interesting thing because of, and I would like it if they even went in that direction because of who Odo is
as a person.
As a person, he's a very stoic character. He's not emotional about it. He's getting a little bit angsty about the situation here. But even if he was abused by his father, he still just has a bit of a I've put this behind me kind of thing about it because he's such a stoic person. And that would be kind of interesting. It's not like you would see in a typical show where it'd be kind of like this I'm going to finally confront my father kind of thing. It's kind of just like, I'm over it, and I'm not going to go back to you, but I'm not going to, continue to fight this because it's not worth it kind of thing. Yeah. That would be an interesting representation you don't see very often.
Yeah, very much. Do you know the movie Affliction with Nick Nolte?
I have not seen it.
Okay, that's Nick Nolte plays like a cop who has an abusive alcoholic father, and he's trying to solve this mystery in the background of the movie as he's like slowly sort of turning into his father, like against his best wishes. And I kind of feel that that's the way that they could have done this here. A little bit of a fact that ties into that is originally this was supposed to be like a Brent Spiner type thing where Renee Auberjonois was to play both characters, Dr. Mora and Odo. They didn't have the time to do that, so they exited out. But they gave him, they put a wig on Mora that makes it look like Odo's hair, so that he's copied his hair. I think that we've talked a good amount about the father-son backstory behind it. What'd you think of the monster movie aspect of it?
It was okay. I mean, it had some classic kind of trope scenes in it. In general, the reveal of the monster is never very good.
Terrible CGI for the monster.
Yeah, it looks very, very bad. Also, I just don't know if it even makes that much sense as far as the plot goes. Like, there's so much that they wrote into this that they just kind of discarded. And it seems weird that it seems like it feels like they didn't know how this thing was going to end as they were filming it, basically, to me, because they do this thing with the shape-shifting on the planet, and they bring things back, and the planet attacks them, spews gas in them, and that gas is what drove Odo to kill. Yep. But they also do a thing where they brought back this obelisk statue thing, which is not resolved at all. There's no reason. I don't think they gave any reason for that to be present in the scenes.
And the little creature they bring back is left unsolved as to if this is a changeling creature.
Yeah, it seems like there's a sentient being here, and they admit that, and it also escaped and was going through their tunnels and through their systems. and never is resolved either. Like,
Well, it dies.
It's just strange.
It just
It
dies.
dies, but
Yeah.
they don't, but it also is replicating. So if it dies, did all of it die, or is it just like there's still some of it running around the ship someplace?
That's true. My assumption is it's all dead, and then I think that the best aspect of the monster thing is that they do a pretty effective job of hiding the fact that it's Odo for a little while.
Yeah.
That works pretty well. It makes total sense when you go back and rewatch it that it's Odo. But even on this rewatch, I was thrown for a little bit. That I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It is supposed to be Odo, and it's not that creature sort of growing and becoming a traditional monster movie. I think that the catching the monster is not great. I don't really like the Incredible Hulkization of Odo that it represents. I think that the anger symbolism is good, but the character work that we talked for the last 15 minutes about isn't strong enough to support that story.
Yeah.
So
It needed more.
Yeah, you're left in this weird position where it doesn't feel super satisfying, and it has bad drama moments where like Sisko's like, we'll put it on stun. If stun doesn't stop him, kill Odo.
Kill him,
And
which is
Kira's
odd.
like, oh my god, and he's like, you obey my orders. It does that kind of stuff, and I don't think it's very effective.
It's also, they could have done more with that because of what I mentioned of we don't know Mora's backstory with Odo, and so we don't understand Odo's anger, and we don't understand Odo's kind of semi-forgiveness of it. But if they wanted to really play into the anger trope, they should have had him on the surface be more forgiving of it,
Yeah.
but have that hidden anger be the thing that drives him to kill later when he becomes in this monster form, because he actually is still angry about it but not admitting it, that he has feelings about it still.
Yeah.
So they don't really play on that he's past it or acting past it, and not as much as they could maybe. I feel like if they had leaned into that a little more, I think the reveal at the end would have been more effective, because it would be kind of the hidden emotions coming out like it is with Hulk.
Yes. Yeah. And that would just be, you need to rewrite the earlier Mora scenes to have a little bit more of a edge to them, I think. And it's a kind of an odd episode too. It has a bunch of scenes. You had mentioned that they dropped it. It has a bunch of scenes that don't really seem to matter to anything. There's the Jake and Sisko Klingon opera discussion.
What I seen liked though, actually.
I like that scene. That's probably maybe my favorite Sisko and Jake interaction, because it felt natural on a level that they don't always.
It felt like a different Cisco to me. I was like, did Cisco change a lot while I've not been watching here? Because this was like, an actual cool relationship moment with the father and son. I don't feel like I've seen before.
No,
to be honest.
It's usually, I don't know if the writing has changed. It's totally dependent on how Brooks plays those scenes, and sometimes he overdoes it, I think, on some level.
He nailed it here.
Yeah, he did nail it. It's a very, he's being a stern father, but he also doesn't have a good reason besides you just have to do your homework to tell him.
The moment when he's like, when was the last time you listened to Klingon opera? It's like, well, when I was like your age. That's just the perfect delivery.
Yes, and Jake says, there's something, Sisko just has a very often like remark about like, if you think that you don't have to do it, you're wrong about that or whatever. It has but
he's never angry about it. He's never like very stern about it. He does seem very.
He realizes he's in a corner with that argument. As soon as that argument starts, he realizes that he's going to be stuck in a corner. It has a very weird scene where when O'Brien is crawling through the Jeffries tube before he finds the dead alien, and he's like, "What's those noises over there?" And it's like this most horrific alien sounding noise, and he's like, "I'll go check that out." He starts over the comm sort of having like a live stream diary entry about being in a relationship, which is really odd and weird that no one tells him like, "Chief, focus on the business at hand." It's just an odd little detail that they stick in.
Yeah, it's a weird moment.
And then Bashir has a sort of weird monologue where he's like, "One day Dax will realize that I love her and I'll win her over." And it's a very odd ending to a scene that felt out of place.
Yeah, that was weird. There's a lot of weird moments.
The Bashir and Dax stuff is actually up until he started having that sort of evil genius monologue. I actually enjoy their interactions more. It's much more subtle at this point and much more believable.
Yep, they've grown. It seems that the whole thing with them, it's not as heavy-handed as it once had to be.
Bashir has matured a little bit. Just the writing has changed him too.
The character's evolved a bit too, and the writing's they figured out how to write him.
Yeah, not to be because he's supposed to be pretty young. I always think of him as older, but when, in the previous episode when O'Brien is 30 and I'm like, oh, what's Bashir, like 35 or something? He's supposed to be 25, I think. So I don't know how old Siddig El Fadil was at that point, but he seems like he's older than 25, but I might be wrong. My last point about this kind of felt like, if you agree, this felt like in the podcast previously, we've been complaining about the fact that DS9 doesn't do TNG stories very well. This felt like a TNG story, but it was done DS9 style, and it worked on some level.
I could definitely see, like you said, there's elements that we've seen in TNG before. There's Data's father-son relationship. There's Riker's. I mean, these are tropes that are kind of recycled in a new way for this, and it does feel like those did.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and it's just the very monster of a week feels like a TNG type activity and stuff like that. It just feels like a much improved version of what those things are. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to play patron thoughts, or not play them, but we're going to read some patron thoughts, and then we are going to give our final ratings, and then we'll call it a day.
Then the possibility exists.
It doesn't! I do not commit criminal acts. It is not in my nature.
Isn't it?
The gas. Maybe it was the gas on the planet. It affected all of you. It must have done something to me.
A possibility.
That has to be it.
Certainly worthy of an investigation.
Dr. Bashir.
Dr. Bashir will not understand any of this. Except that you have turned into some kind of uncontrolled thing that tried to kill him. Really, Odo? What do you think they'll do with you?
Do?
They won't know what to do with you. They'll put you in a high-security prison or quarantine you on a deserted asteroid in the Gamma Quadrant. Odo, they'll put you in a zoo.
I don't believe that. You don't know them.
What other humanoid have you been able to trust except me?
What makes you think I trust you?
All right, so patron thoughts for the alternate. If you guys support the show at patreon.com/the Pensky File, you give a couple $2 a month, you get extra podcasts. You also get the ability to chime in on upcoming episodes, and we'll read your thoughts on the podcast. I don't know why I said that like a New York. Read your thoughts. We're going
read
to
your thoughts.
We're going to read some. We're going to read your thoughts, kid. We're going to go through those things now. So if you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/the Pensky File, and that's the best way to do it. Holly McLaughlin writes, the alternate. I don't really understand this one. Never have. Looking forward to this episode so you can straighten me out. Hopefully we did. Let us know, Holly, if we
did. We did.
Nailed it. Hopefully. I similarly feel confused about the episode. I think our discussion sort of delved into that. Stephen Carr writes, the alternate. Dr. Mora's character is interesting. The actor does a great job with the character, making their motivations and attitudes believable. The rest of the episode is a meh. The rambling monologues of O'Brien and the Jeffrey Stube and Bashir after Dax turns him down feel forced. I probably disagree with you a little bit, Steve. And I think the actor does a good job. I think his writing could have been improved a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's see. Matthew Ross, the alternate. I really enjoyed the bug hunt aspect and actually thought the reveal that Odo is the same thing was handled well, and it kept me slightly guessing as to when I saw it. When I saw it originally when it was broadcast. The misdirection in the small petri dish item to the pylon. I thought the creature was actually one of those other things. Even now, not remembering, I thought it was the pylon. But the hiding in plain sight issue and the chaos was interesting and made Odo not only vulnerable but dangerous, however, not unstoppable and mildly indestructible like Data. The issues Odo has had with his father makes me hear whining at home. Stop it, Daddy. Don't mention me on the Pensky File. And the fact that in some ways we may disagree and almost dislike our own parents, but then come around to respect and understanding. Yeah, it's all about that. I guess maybe
it depends on what Mora did, though.
Yes, it depends on what Mora did.
Story.
And maybe your own perspective on that kind of relationship might color things for you. Kyle Barrett, the alternate. I like having Odo be his usual confident self in the first scene with Quark before then seeing the contrast when Mora Pole turns up and he starts acting like a grumpy teenager embarrassed by his parents. However, the rest of the episode falls flat for me because the stuff with Dr. Mora gets lost when the episode becomes a monster show. I think it's a missed opportunity to have a person Odo was essentially raised by not be more interesting. Sorry about that. I like their relationship, but I feel it could have been the focus of the episode and have another layer. Also, DS9 needs to update its security procedures because apparently a level 5 security seal simply means placing an upside-down plastic bowl over something. It's true.
It's a spider got loose.
The spider got loose. He melted through the plastic bowl. I agree, Kyle. I don't really disagree with anything you said there. Probably the weirdest thing about it is the lack of resolution to the changeling stuff, which is the entire basis of going out there. The pylons, the planet, Why would Mora go back to Bajor if there's still a thing out there to study? Right.
Like, doesn't make any sense.
And it seems remarkably close. I think they say it's something like 6 light years or something from the entrance to the wormhole, which in Star Trek terms doesn't seem all that far. It feels like it's right next door to it. But the Gamma Quadrant is pretty... They haven't really defined the Gamma Quadrant at this point, so it's difficult to know what's sort of out there. That's about it. We'll give it our ratings. I'll go first. Mo, you went first last time. I'll give this one a 3. I think this is a pretty stock standard episode. It's different from Rivals in a lot of ways, but it's still the same kind of like... I don't really have too many tremendous problems with it. I think it has some issues, but not enough that are really problematic. I would just like to see more clarification of characterization, stuff like that. So I'll give it a 3 out of 5. How about you?
I was gonna... It's kind of the same boat as me. As I think last time I gave it a 4. This time I'm gonna give it a 3. Kind of adding a half a point to each because of... Or subtracting half a point just due to writing. Yep. So I removed a half a point from this one for writing, but so does the 3 for me.
Okay. It could have been a little bit redone on some level. I find it more interesting.
It could be a lot better.
I find it more interesting than Rivals, but less well executed on some level, if that makes any sense. But
that makes sense.
It's a little bit of a strange one. Anyway, guys, if you want to support the show, Patreon is the way to go. Patreon.com/the Pensky File. Social media links are all in the blurbs below. Check that out. Let's see here. Modi's channel. I'll put a link to that. You can check that out on youtube.com. And we'll be back with... What the hell is after this? It's a famous one, isn't it? Armageddon Game. Yeah, so Armageddon Game is the one after this. So we have a couple strong episodes coming up. Modi, non sequitur endings. Do you want to go first? Or I can go first?
You go first.
What the hell was it? Oh, right. I tweeted. I just had a flash of fear as like I had something, and then you're like, you go, and it's like I don't remember it all. I was just looking at since I had to do the website, the PenskyPodcast.com, because we got compromised by some Chinese malware. I had to redesign or retheme it and sort of fill out everything. So I put up all these pictures, and I've been going through all the posts. It's incredibly tedious uploading a picture that'll serve as like the featured image for each one. It's incredibly boring, but I noticed that we did the Dauphin, TNG's the Dauphin in season 2. We did that exactly 3 years ago from when we are recording today. So time flies.
That's great.
That's kind of crazy to me on some level.
Yeah.
3 years.
Time flies.
I mean,
yeah. Wow.
The more I think about it, the less crazy it sounds, but it's still like...
Been doing this a long time.
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's more the fact that like we've known each other for 3 years, which is kind of
that's that too.
It's just a strange thing.
Well, we go way back even before that though too.
Yeah, that's right. When we did our old podcast, the very first podcast.
Well, we basically started our channels at like the exact same time, pretty much.
Yes, and I don't think my channel didn't exist for that much before the Star Trek. Maybe 4 years. It was maybe a year before the Star Trek stuff started, and I started doing that. But yeah, it's been 4 years if you look at it that way, which is interesting, which is like fascinating on some level. Anyway, do you have a non sequitur?
I started playing A Way Out. It's a new game from EA, made by the guys that did Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. And it's a co-op split-screen game you can play online, actually. And it's kind of a prison escape game. It's a third-person perspective, high realism, set in like the 70s, I think. Sure. You're trying to escape from this prison and get revenge on this guy that wronged you both. But it's a cool game. It's a cool split-screen game, and it's also the way I've never seen this done before. But you can buy one copy, and you can invite a friend to it that doesn't even own it, and they can play it with you, and
nice.
They don't have to buy a second copy. Which I've never seen any title do that before, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, it seems like a good idea. It's on Steam.
It is on Origin. EA's thing.
Okay. Does that's fascinating. It seems like a good idea, basically.
Yeah. It's gonna introduce a lot of people to the game. Now I can't play it anymore without my buddy, so
right.
it limits me from getting to enjoy it any more than I already have.
I guess my non sequitur off of that would just be game related. I installed an emulator recently, and I don't have the patience for emulators, I think. Like, I just cannot.
It's a lot of setup.
It's so much, like, I can't believe it's this difficult at this day and age to emulate things. I know they want it to be difficult, but it's like every step of the way is clunky. Like, trying to figure out which emulator to use, trying to find a ROM, and all the ROM sites basically look like the sleaziest sites on the internet that you can find.
Disreputable. Yeah.
Like, all the downloading you're doing is just like everything you download, you scan it 7 times to make sure that nothing's wrong
Just
with
to
it.
be sure.
It's like, and the point of this would just be like, can goddamn companies just get their stuff onto some kind of virtual store so I don't have to do this?
You'll pay money for it. It's like the iTunes. You're going through an illegal means to get a thing that should just exist.
Right. And I would easily...
It's Napster before iTunes, you know?
Yeah, I would easily pay it. I don't want to do the emulator. It sucks. I don't like the experience.
Put it at a good price and you buy it.
Just put it on your store. It's fine. I will buy the thing. It can't take... And, well, do you know this old brouhaha about the Chrono Trigger to Steam port?
Oh, yeah.
And stop doing that kind of stuff. Why are you...
Well, I played Chrono Trigger as an emulator on my phone a few years ago, and that worked nicely. Like, it was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, I don't expect a whole lot of the quality, but it's all working fine. And actually, to be honest, if you do Android emulators, it's way easier than trying to do it in PC.
Is it? Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So was the Chrono Trigger the mobile port, or was it an emulator?
No, it was an emulator version of Chrono Trigger.
Interesting. Maybe that's the way to go with it, I think, because they make these mobile ports, which are all like easy to read on mobile devices and stuff, but then they port it to the PC and it looks like garbage. And it's like, just don't do this. What are you doing? Anyway, that's about it. So, Modi, thanks for coming on.
Anytime.
Guys, we will see you next time with Armageddon Game.